Welcome to Marathon Maple's brief review of Frostpunk. I'm Matthias.
And I'm Lisa.
We're going to be doing a brief overview of the game, and we're going to come back and share our thoughts.
Frostpunk is based on a video game, and it is in a post-apocalyptic world where you are trying to survive by staying warm, staying fed, and trying to get a generator to run and keep your new city of New London warm. The game is played over multiple rounds of 9 phases. Your first major phase is your morning phase, where you'll be making a tough decision for your citizens. Then you have the generator phase to see how much you are stressing out your generator. Next is the weather phase, where you are going to be increasing the cold and adjusting where the different temperatures are for your different locations. Next is sickness. Have you killed any of your citizens? Next is the action phase, where you can do things like clear snow, laying down new tiles, you can cut down trees using sawmills, add new buildings, remove ruins, as well as placing out workers to take different actions. Then you have your citizen cards, which will give you a one-time bonus action. Law cards are awesome because you get a set of 2 cards and you can only choose one of them, making you make tough decisions. Next, you can explore, and then you have the dusk phase, where you are going to again make tough decisions, and you are going to have a discontent track, a hope track, and a hunger and food track that you will need to manage throughout the game. You then need to know that you have enough houses, bunkhouses, and tents to make sure that your citizens can sleep and be nice and toasty warm so that they survive without getting sick.
And we're back from the brief, so let's go over some of the things we like about the game and some of the things we don't really like about the game. The number one thing that I enjoy about this game is that it tells stories. I enjoy pushing cubes around a Euro board as much as anybody else, but they're harrowing stories in this one.
They really draw you into the gameplay, and the phases within the game match the story.
Yeah, it's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure in certain cases, because when you wake up, you'll have a morning card, and you're going to be given a little dire circumstance and 3 options. You can either be cool about it, but it might cost you some resources now. You can kind of be mean about it and just shut it down. That's going to hurt you later on. You can kind of be in between. And you have the same thing later on with some of your dust cards and just some of the options that you generally have in the game. So you have to make tough decisions, and you can kind of you're building a narrative throughout the game.
And the neat part of that is, when you're playing with another person, we don't always agree on which road to take. Matthias likes to take the high road. I sometimes am willing to allow you to suffer to get ahead now.
Yeah, just willing to allow you to suffer. She's out there with child labor camps. She's making people eat rats and get poisoned later on. She's doing the whole thing. But I think that's kind of you can play the game in different ways. So you can be like Lisa and be a mean, evil dictator. Love you, honey. Or you can try to play middle of the road, or you can try to be a little bit more benevolent. And each game and each style has its own different kind of outcomes. So you can go back and play the same scenarios over and over again, but maybe just approach it from a different mindset, and it's going to change the game completely every time. So what do you think about the variety in this game, Liz?
It's really neat because of the way that the cards interact. So every game is going to be different based on what dust cards you get, the laws you enact, and every time you do a law, you have to throw out a companion law. So you want child labor, you can't have child shelters and protect the kids. So it's kind of neat how those things work together. And then you also have morning cards, again, as Matthias mentioned earlier, that are going to shift. Every scenario has its own unique setup as well.
Okay, let's get into component quality. I guess the big component is the generator in general, but what do you think about the rest of the components here?
The rest of the components in this game are high quality, and they all add to the table presence, from the unique art, the storytelling told on every card, so that you know a lot of thought went into every aspect of this game. And then you have your little wooden meeples. You really get into the feel of the game using all of the different components and all of the tracks. There's recessed boards to help keep you organized. So it is a table hog. I won't lie about that. But I think all the components serve a purpose and add to the game. The neat part is they understand that generator can get in the way, so they've actually designed a way for you to play with it to the side or as that centerpiece to the main board, which I thought was that extra touch that they actually listened to people, I'm guessing, during playtesting.
One of the things I do like that maybe not everybody is going to like is this game is very, at least for us, it's very hard.
Yeah, This is definitely a mind breaker.
Yeah, like I feel like one thing is you always have to make tough decisions, and somebody is maybe going to get sick or you can't gather all the resources you want. So you really have to kind of like do your best to balance with your objectives.
Yeah, and there's more than one way to lose, but only one way to win.
Another thing that we like to do is just put the Frostpunk soundtrack on in the background. It's a little bit darker, but it kind of, I feel like it fits the theme.
It definitely does. I have to say, it's a bit gloomy, so while you're playing the game, it works, but turn it off. This guy leaves it on sometimes.
Things that we didn't like. There's a learning curve here. It's pretty substantial.
Yes. If you're enjoying our content, please hit the subscribe button. I find that there was a lot of rule checking, fact checking, and because of that variety that we do love, there's also a lot of, what does this code actually mean? How do I do that? There are 9 phases, so there's 9 sets of steps that you have to understand. So the first game we played, we had a few issues with our sick people. We figured those out by the game 2.
Yeah, there's just a lot to remember, and you're always going to be kind of like going through that rule book. I would have to say the cards, I think, are well done in terms of what is on there. It's pretty clear, but just having to remember all these rules and how everything goes, it takes a game or two to get into it. But then it's kind of, I would say that once we started playing this a little bit, it just seemed like second nature.
Absolutely. All the codes and activities that you're doing kind of fall into place and help you along, and then you're just looking up the rules for individual codes. So I think that, yes, there's a learning curve, but once you get there, it's really enjoyable to keep going.
Yeah, I would recommend watching the Paul Grogan gaming rules. That thing is awesome. It's an hour, right? It's a long time. Hour. And he's shooting through it in an hour. I think it really helps get the game flow down before you hit at the table. And as he recommended, and we found out to be true, is those first couple games, you're going to be kind of like bumping around. You're going to do a few things that, like, by round 4, you go like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that. So there's definitely a learning curve to get into that. But once you're there, it makes more sense. It's still like you still have to refer to the rule book, but over time it gets a little bit better. I think another thing as well that goes along with that learning curve and just the game itself is the session length. Gamebox says 2 hours per game. I think we are going over that just because there's all those hard decisions and maybe we're going back and forth on it. But it makes it a hard set up this gigantic game, play them one night, and then put it away. So I think this is a game that you're going to want to play in multiple sessions and then maybe revisit it a little later on. Build on top of that, the one last thing that I don't think it really bothers me so much, but it's just something to be aware of, is this is really a 1 to 2 player game at most. I would not want to play this with 4 people. It's just too complex to be sharing all that decision-making space.
And they do have 4 different characters, and each person's supposed to get a different character and kind of have rule over certain decisions and actions to kind of share out the work and tracking. Mm-hmm. And then you have a leader icon. That person's supposed to trump the rule for that round. But I do agree with Matthias. This is basically a solo game that they have turned into a 1 to 4 player game.
So what do you say, Lisa, from a conclusion standpoint? Number one, do you like it?
I do like it. I love the storyline and how well they've incorporated all of the flavor text into the cards.
I agree. I like it as a 2-player game, and I also enjoy it solo.
And just the overall production of this game makes you want to get it out and set it up on the table because it's beautiful and has that theme.
Yeah, and I like this. I like heavier games, and I feel like there aren't as many heavier games out here these days. So this kind of scratches that itch. And I like heavy co-ops as well. Like, it's just a whole different kind of experience.
Yeah, it's very thought-provoking, and the decision platform here can keep you guessing and keep you coming back to the table, and also walking away from the table at times. We've taken some breathers, I won't lie. Yep. So overall, this is a game that's going to stay in our collection based on replayability, theme, and overall gameplay.